Today I'm finishing this series that I've been in, and this is the 5th week of life's difficulties. Life's difficulties. I think some people have actually decided I'm not going to come throughout the entire series because I don't want to talk about life's difficulties. I would prefer to deny that they exist. I don't know how well that's going for them, but that's a hard sell. That's a hard sell. Denying that they exist, that's a hard sell. At least in the lives of people as I witness it and in my own life as well. But here's something that I've noticed that is really difficult, is trying to discern if something is an opportunity or a difficulty. As I'm looking at something that's in front of me and trying to discern, do I go through that door? Do I take that step? Do I enter into that relationship? Do I serve God in that way? Do I take this job? Do I take that promotion? What do I do? Do I move there? Do I stay here? What should I do? I don't know if you've ever been in anything like that before. Probably. And you're discerning and asking yourself the question, is this an opportunity or is this a difficulty? I want to save you some time. And I want to answer that question by simply saying, yeah. Yes, it is both. In fact, I have determined, I may preach a whole nother series called Life's Opportunity sometime after this. I got a few things coming up over the course of these next few weeks in the month of May and some standalone things. But I may preach a series on life's opportunities next, because one of the unique things that happens in life is that God gives us opportunities, and with those opportunities come difficulties. In the midst of the opportunities that are even from God, comes with it difficulties. I want to use today for Exhibit 1A, one of my favorite Old Testament people and characters by the name of David, who is a fascinating person. Maybe you've heard of him before, because David is out on the hillside tending sheep. He is the least likely person to be noticed by the outside world. And then this guy by the name of Samuel the prophet comes to his family's house, his dad's house, and he starts going through each of the sons because he's there to be able to find the next king. And David's dad, Jesse, brings out, each of the sons that are the most impressive of the sons. He was not thinking about the short, bald guy who was sitting out in the field. I just imagine, that would be the way that he looks. He does it. David is a very fine-looking man, but I just like to tell myself he's probably a little shorter than average, probably bald, and, just dealing with those issues that come along with that in my own imagination. That's what he's like. I don't know why I imagine that, but that's part of my imagination where it goes. And Dave's out in the field, and then Samuel comes along, and he's looking for the next king. They're like, this is all we've got. Well, actually, we forgot about this one kid. His name's Dave. He's sitting out in the field. We could bring him in, but he's not very impressive. And Samuel says, that's the one. And he anoints David as the next king. Israel already had a king by the name of Saul, but he anoints David to be the next one. Saul's not doing so well. And you may think at a moment like that the likely trajectory of David's life is to go from the field to the crown, this moment of coronation for a king in which he would then be installed. But instead, he goes back to the field to keep tending the sheep, and he waits, 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 and he waits some more. And then finally, the biggest opportunity that he has is not a call to be like, hey, we're ready for you to be king, but it is, hey, can you take some lunch to deliver it to your brothers because they're warriors. They're doing important stuff while you're out tending the sheep. And can you take some lunch down to the battle lines because there's this stalemate that's going on, because there's this issue, because there's this big dude, his name's Goliath, and he's got everybody freaking out, and he's daring everybody to come at him, and nobody wants to come at him, and he's defying God, he's defiant to God and all of God's people. And Dave has wandered down to the front lines of a battle scene and sizes up a situation differently than anybody else had ever sized it up, because he looked at things not through the lens of what it was that people could do. He looked through the lens of faith in what God could do. And he ends the stalemate, takes down Goliath, and on the other side of that opportunity / difficulty was battle after battle after battle. And David excelled, so much so that they cheered and chanted. All of his story is found, or most of it, in 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel in the Old Testament. If you want to read all of this, and please do, always fact check a preacher when he's covering lots of ground, okay, as I am. I'm going to read some passages here in a moment, but I'm just telling you to save some time. He goes on and he kills tens of thousands battle over and over and over again. Each opportunity / difficulty, he excels, he exceeds expectations, and they chant his name places where he goes. In fact, they say about Saul's killed his thousands, but Dave, his tens of thousands. He is excelling and exceeding expectations, and Saul becomes very jealous and decides, I'm going to kill Dave. And he sends people after him time and time again, and David avoids it and navigates all of it, becomes king, unites the kingdom, conquers Jerusalem, makes it whole again, brings something called the Ark of the Covenant, which in those days was the place where God dwelt amongst his people. He brings it into the center of Jerusalem. He dances in the streets, throws a party, declares God is here with us and worthy of all of our praise and all of our worship. Dave excelled and exceeded expectations over and over and over again. Almost. Close. It can be easy for us to read these stories that we learn. Those of you who are church kids in Sunday school, which I skipped all of that. Most of that until I was older. So I didn't learn about David when I was like 5. I learned about David when I was 15-ish. It can be easy for us to hear these stories and be like, man, what a guy. What a guy. Like where are I can imagine women hearing stories like this be like, where are the men like that? And that's a fair question. Where are the men like that dude? Because by the way, he could also play a harp. Saul invited him to his palace to play. The dude is musically inclined. He's not bald. He's beautiful. All right. He can play the harp. He looks good. He's like, give me the giant. I'll take him down with a slingshot and some stones. Right. Give me my sword. What are y'all afraid of? This is David. But here's the thing that I want to be sure and highlight for us today is that all of these difficulties that David experienced / opportunities sometimes can do something to the inside of us that we're not aware of. And I want to bring some awareness to it today. Difficulties can damage us. Difficulties can damage us. Along the way, as strong as Dave seemed on the exterior, he was taking little bing, bing, little shots to the soul, and he was getting dented up on the inside. And so much so, here's one of the ways that he describes this, and this is where I want to begin today in the scriptures. Some of you are like, I thought we already started. That was the introduction. Psalm 69. This is what David said in one of those moments where he is acknowledging the damage of some of the difficulties. He says, save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck. See, some of y'all thought that around here we came up with the saying, I've had it up to here. You know, Dave was writing about that in Psalm 69 in the Old Testament days. I had it up to here. Had it up to here. I generally just say that in regards to my children. But anyway, occasionally when it comes to ministry stuff, I had it up to here, like up to my neck. I'm up to my neck in it. He's writing this to God. Again, some of us think you can't be that honest with God. Try it. I've had it up to here. And simultaneously, verse 2, he says, I sink in the miry depths where there is no foothold. I've had it up to here and I'm sinking. I'm going down deeper. I've come into the deep waters and the floods engulf me. Like I've waded out into the deep. I've waded out into the depths of who God is and what God has called me to do. And I've seen some stuff. I've experienced some stuff. But when I got there, the water felt like it was too much for me. I'm engulfed in it. I'm worn out. I love his honesty here. I'm worn out. I'm tired. I'm fatigued. I'm worn out, calling for help. My throat is parched. Like physically, he's physically tired, calling out for help. He says, my eyes fail, looking for God. The difficulties that oftentimes very few people were aware of in David's life. He had a couple of close friends along the way who got to see into parts of it. But at the end of the day, David had crowds of people chanting his name, but felt very, very lonely on a lot of occasions. Sometimes he felt as lonely after people had chanted his name as he did when he was on the hillside tending sheep. How is that possible for us? How is it possible at times in your life in which you have experienced even success, but you feel lonelier than ever before? These difficulties damaged David emotionally. He's distraught. He's distressed. I've had it up to here. They damaged him mentally as he has seen so much. And the images in which he has seen along the way have engraved things on his mind that he wished that he could forget. They've damaged him physically. He's tired. His throat hurts because he's been praying so loudly, looking for some relief. He's damaged spiritually. He's in such a dry and a dark season in which he feels like he can't even feel God. Can't hear from God. That's a really, really difficult place to be in. And it's not a place that we could imagine that people like a spiritual leader, like a person like Dave could ever experience. But I want for us to understand our own humanity and your own humanity. That if you think to yourself for one moment, I am exempt from this type of difficulty, especially if I'm pursuing the opportunities that God has placed in front of me. Friends, not only are you not exempt, but this is in large part giving words to the way that some of you feel today. I'm not exempt. There have been difficulties each and every step of the way in my life, especially as I've tried to seize the opportunities that God has placed in front of me or called me to. Like I remember I started preaching when I was 17 years old, and immediately the core of what it was that God had called me to do was one of a sense of an evangelistic type of sense. I wanted for people to hear the good news of Jesus, especially those who were far from him, who did not know him yet. That was the greatest driving passion of my life. So I would gather people anywhere and everywhere that I was. So what I started doing when I was in high school, gathering people and preaching the gospel. It was just what I did. And I remember early on one of the moments that I had, and maybe I've been preaching for like a year or so, and I gathered people outside at this venue, at this community center, and I was preaching the gospel, we were feeding people, and I'd invited some people from the church where I had met Jesus a few years prior to that, and I invited them to come to it, and I was preaching the gospel. And listen, Pastor Mark in his 30s is like a Mark on sedatives, okay, in comparison to like 18-year-old Mark. I just need for you to understand, there was a lot of energy. There was so much so I've had to calm myself in order to teach people, okay, because I just want to just it's like fire hydrant style, preaching, bam, 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 bam. It's just like, man, shell-shocking people regularly. And I'm preaching, and there's people coming, and there are these like teenagers who come, and they're at the thing, and they don't ever go to church, but they come into this thing that's outside, and there were 4 people that day. I remember the face of one of them in particular to this day, and he said yes to Jesus in a moment of invitation time, and I was over the moon. I was just through the roof. This is the greatest thing that could have happened today for these people. And afterwards, I'm going through and I'm talking to people who were there. And I'm talking to some of the guys who had come from the place where I had been previously, where I had met Jesus. And I was like, isn't this awesome? People are coming to know Jesus. And they look at me and they say to me, hey, I'm not okay with what you're doing. I'm like, you're not okay with what is happening. I'm struggling to understand. Well, one, you're outside. And church is supposed to happen inside, because that's in the Bible. Anyways, things I hold in that I never say in conversations, I just share it with you. Like, yeah, because that's in the Bible. All right, what else you got? Also you have drums, which is also in the Bible. But anyways, and you're wearing shorts. Sure enough, I got photos of this. Me in my long, baggy cargo shorts with a baggy polo on, preaching outside in 90-degree weather, just sweating. It's like, you got shorts on, you're outside, you're using drums. And the wrong translation of the Bible. There's a list. And I walked away from that day thinking to myself, how can it be that God placed an opportunity in front of me and I seized it, but at the end of the day, I'm walking away and I'm like, I think I lost my friends. I think I lost my friends. I think I lost some of the people who were there the day I met Jesus and prayed for me. And I quickly got over that. It's not really a big deal. It's not really a big deal. When I stepped into ministry, the first church that I was a pastor at, I was an interim pastor, which means a temporary one. And I took this at age of 21 because I was an intern, and there was a church that I loved dearly, and I went from intern to interim pastor. It's a long story. I was in this season, though, of life, and I'm preaching and preaching and preaching and preaching. And in the middle of all this, I had been there for about a year or so, and there are people who come to me and they say, hey, we think that you should just stay. And I had really struggled with that because that place was not like me a whole lot, but I love the people dearly. I couldn't have worn this there and done well with a lot of people. And I'm preaching, and I'm slowly moving from suits to more comfortable attire. And I'm preaching, and I'm doing all of these things, and I became aware that as I was there, that if I wanted to be able to be qualified to be at a place like this, I needed a master's degree. I only had an undergrad degree. I decided, because there were people who started saying that they didn't think I could do it. I decided I'm going to do it. And I did a master's degree in 12 months. Just around the clock in theology, just around the clock. I would preach, work, study, repeat over and over again for you, because I was going to make it. You know what I'm saying? I was going to make it. I was going to prove that I could do it. And I did it. I made it to that point. I thought, man, I have actually earned the thing that I needed to be qualified to do this permanently. And I lost. They voted on me, and I lost. 70%. I needed 75. I lost. Which actually is kind of like the Red Sea parting in a traditional church. But anyways, I walked away thinking, that's pretty good. Like, did anybody think I would get that high? I don't know. This is like a miracle. An approval rating of that high. I did a great job. I don't have a job now, but I did a great job. Yeah. So again, I'm like, that's not really, I walked away, I thought, that's really not that big of a deal, because I did the thing, and I understand it was not like the best fit ever. But I did the thing that I thought I needed to do to cross the place where I would make it into approval. And I'm telling you, like a few years later, you have a minute for personal story time? Sorry, this is a lot. This is a lot. Yeah, and so here's what happened, though, in the course of my life, is that I left there and I went to a church, beautiful, beautiful people, the most stable season of life that I had been in. It was incredible. We loved it there. People were so kind and gracious and generous to us. And then I felt like God called me away. And we left because after that previous season of life, I believed that God was calling me to start something new. I believed that God had put something in me that was different from what I had been in previously. And I felt like I had this opportunity now to do it, because some people came to me and said, hey, here's what we would like for you to do. We want for you to come here to this place, and then we're going to launch you and send you out to do this new work, and it's going to be this incredible thing. I said, this is it. What does this look like? I don't know, but we're going to take a pay cut, and we're going to lose insurance and retirement. Who needs all that anyway? I'm in my early 20s. It'll all be fine. Right? It's what faith and, a certain lack of wisdom, involved in all of that. And so we go and we're in it. We've been in it for several months, and we're getting really close to this opportunity and starting this new season. And then what was brought to me is, we need for you to go through this assessment process to make sure that you're qualified. And I thought, that's a perfectly good idea. That is true. I'm all about this. And so this will help me be able to, develop awareness and find my weak spots. And we go through all of these things. And my wife and I go through this week-long intensive, and I have to preach these mini sermons in front of people and let them judge me with scorecards and like all those kinds of things. It's like a dunk contest, but for preachers, and it's just like, is that a 10? Was that good? Should I yell louder? Did you hear me? No, quieter. What would your preference be? Did I stutter too much? Not enough, right? And so, did I appear human enough, or was I too polished? Was that too? Did I enunciate too much, or not enough? Yeah, and we got through all of these things, and at the end of it, I get this report that you are strongly recommended to start right away. I thought, that's good. I was like, I'm so glad. My wife was about 7 months pregnant at the time. She enjoyed going through that pregnant, by the way. Intense assessments for a pregnant lady. It's like, oh. And it didn't work out. Funding was pulled. We had to move. We had to start over again. And I only share all of this with you because never for self-pity, because I don't feel badly for me. I understand the context of every single one of those things that has happened. But here's why I share these things with you. Because I've been damaged by difficulties too. Opportunities that were coupled with difficulties. I've been damaged by those things too. But in the middle of all of that, along the way, what I come to realize, especially when I look back, is the mindset that I want to share with us today. Mindset number 5 in life's difficulties. I've been damaged, but God isn't done. I've been damaged, but God isn't done. Being damaged is inevitable. I've been damaged by some of the difficulties that I've endured. Like, there were things that happened in the midst of each of those, even though they're not that bad. The things that happened in the midst of some of those difficulties is that my mind started to believe people are always assessing you. People are always going to assess you. And then they're going to reassess you and reassess you. And part of what I started to believe was that not only do you need to win at every assessment, is that even when you do, it won't be enough. That's what I started to believe. That's why I shared that with you. Because over the course of time, we have to become aware, not just that we've been damaged by the difficulty, but what did it do to us, you know? What did it do in here to your mind? What did it do in here to your heart? And how have you lived as a result of it? I've been damaged by it, but every step of the way, what I've come to realize is that God isn't done. God wasn't done with David in the midst of each of those difficulties when he's crying out to God, where are you? He wasn't done with me, and he's not done with you. It's not done with you. And I love what David did at the last part of verse 3 when he says, my eyes fail looking for God. But here's the beautiful part, is that he was looking for God. Well, he was looking for God. Don't stop looking for God. Don't stop looking for God. What the devil wants for you to do in the difficulty and in the damage is to adopt a victim mindset. Well, oh, woe is me. I lost again. I'll never make it. I'll never be enough. I'll never get their approval. I'll never, ever accomplish anything. But with God, you're not done because he's not done. He's not done. So when he invites us, he says, hey, keep looking for God in the dark night of the soul, in the winter season of the soul, when he doesn't feel close, when you can't hear his voice, when the words on the scriptures, on the pages of scriptures aren't just jumping off the page at you. Keep looking. Keep looking. Keep looking. It says, his mindset. Now, here's what I also want for us to see. This is where that led David to. A couple chapters over, a couple Psalms over. This is what he says in Psalm 71. Though you have made me see troubles, he's talking to God. It's like, you've made me see troubles. All these opportunities that I've had along the way, they've come with troubles, many and bitter. But look at what he says. This is his confidence. Simultaneously, you will. Somebody say, you will. You will what? Restore my life again. I've lost some stuff in these difficulties, and as I've been damaged, but God, you will restore. You will restore my life again. From the depths of the earth, you will. Somebody say, you will. You will again bring me up. It's not that I don't get down. Come on, it's just that I know that my God is faithful and he will bring me up again. You will, verse 21, increase my honor. You will increase my honor. God, if you know me, I'm not worried about who doesn't know me. God, if you treat me as an honored guest, if you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, if you anoint my head with oil, I believe I'm coming up. I believe you're going to add to me. I believe you're going to increase my life, my influence, my stature, my strength, my peace, my joy. Increase is on my way. Increase my honor and comfort me once more. It's not if we get damaged. It's where we look in the midst of being damaged. That's what's key and crucial. It's what I'm looking for. I don't want to spend time looking for pity, looking for approval, looking for attention, looking for things that the world has to offer in the midst of seasons like that, when God says, I want for you to keep looking for me. Because if you seek me, you'll find me. If you seek me with your whole heart, you'll find me. You'll find me. You'll find me. And I feel like somebody today is coming out of a winter season or a dark night of the soul, and you're stepping into springtime. And you're starting to see the thing that was buried in the darkness and the devastation, is starting to bloom. And now it's starting to make sense a little bit why you had to be in the darkness. Now it's starting to make sense a little bit why you were in the winter and you were wondering, God, where are you? God, are you going to show up? God, are you going to pull through? And when God does it, he does it at the right time. And it is a powerful, undeniable, reviving time. He brings him up, restores, increases, and comforts. Here's the thing. I hinted at this earlier. He doesn't always get it right. Man, he does so often. He does so often. You know what I've also noticed? When I'm damaged by difficulties, I'm also tempted by things that I'm not as tempted by some of the rest of the time. And I remember moments at times in my life in which I experienced loss or pain, and this weird thing happened on the other side of it that I could not quite explain. I was tempted by things that I wasn't tempted by before. And I want to bring that to our awareness, because I want for you to pay attention to it. I want for you to pay attention to it. Because when you are damaged by difficulty, even if they've come on the other side of opportunity, you are vulnerable because you're human. And when David messed up, he had been on this stretch, yes, where he was excelling and he was succeeding. Oh, he was growing so tired. And he gets to this place and point where he makes a crucial mistake. And it's what I want to share with us when we're in moments of temptation and vulnerability is this: don't disengage. Don't disengage. Don't disengage from the disciplined things, practices that you need to put in place that got you to the place and point where you were. David disengaged. This one time, 2 Samuel chapter 11. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained in Jerusalem. Everybody else is out. All of his armies are out. They're fighting. They're doing what they were supposed to be doing. They're doing the things that got them to the place and point of success. They're doing all of it. But David steps back. David steps back. I heard some research recently that said that oftentimes CEOs of companies who don't end well and make crucial mistakes, do you know when it happens? In the last 6 months, after decades. Why does that happen? Because they start to disengage. Why do pastors experience great moral failures after years of success? Because they start to disengage. Oh, I've heard that story before. Oh, yeah, I'm getting bored with praying. I'm getting tired of getting out there and sharing my faith and dealing with people's troubles. And they insulate themselves from all the rest of the world. David's classic exhibit 1A, he disengages, he steps back from everything that he knew to do. And at the same time, verse 2, one evening, David got up from his bed, walked around the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "She's Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." Oh, she's married. Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her, and she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David saying, "I am pregnant." One crucial error. Because after dealing with all the difficulties, he disengages. And we can kind of understand, can't we? I mean, like we can never ever just say that was okay, because it's not. We can never look at something that's wrong and call it right. But on a personal level, we can kind of get it sometimes, right? When we're really tired and we're super fatigued and we've been fighting and we've been battling, and then we get to a place of vulnerability and we're like, I haven't drank in a long time, but I think one sip would help. I haven't smoked in a long time, but I think just one would help. I haven't taken anything in a long time, but I think there's some pills tucked away somewhere in grandma's cabinet. Come on, I think there's something somewhere. There's a relationship. I haven't messaged her since high school, but I think now would be the right time while I'm in my 40s to try to reach out and re-engage in that situation, because maybe there'd be just something fun. Or maybe he would at least just say something nice about me, like I'm pretty. Or I'm kind. Maybe I could get just something, you know? Like that's where David is. I just could use something here, because I've been doing all these things. And where has it gotten me? I'm standing around walking on the roof. Nobody knows that I'm here. I don't know if anybody cares that I'm here, because people really only need Dave when there's a problem they can't solve. And he disengages. And he glances over. And he takes something that's not his. And then he moves Uriah to the front lines of the battlefield to make sure he could axe him and get him out of the picture. Because you can do something in one moment of vulnerability that all of a sudden feels like it becomes your identity. I'm a bad man. I'm a villain. I do bad things. And this messed Dave's life up. Messed him up. Messed him up. When he was at his best, though, which was most of the time, that's why he was heralded as this great king. When he was at his best, though, here's what he was really good at: connecting the dots. Connect the dots. Connect the dots. Here's what I want for us to see in the midst of difficulty is that we need to get really good at connect the dots. Here's what I mean. 1 Samuel chapter 17. You remember this. This is part of the story I talked about earlier. 1 Samuel 17. When David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine Goliath." He says, "Your servant will go down and fight him." Saul replied, "You're not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You're only a young man, and he has been a warrior since his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, what did I do? I went after it, I struck it, and I rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it." I told y'all this is a bad man, right? Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. So this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." And he wins. But I wanted for us to see that, because when he was good, he wasn't disengaged. He was connecting dots. He was looking back and saying to himself, "Oh, look at what God did last time. The lion, the bear, I rescued sheep. I can rescue God's people." So I want to show us this real quickly. Let's go to the big screen. All right, let's play Connect the Dots. Here's what happens. Here's what I mean connect the dots. Is one, we do the next Jesus-like thing. The next thing that God has called us to do now, we go, boom, we connect the dot. We pray. We study his word. We love our neighbor. We reach somebody with the gospel. Come on, we sign up to serve on a team. We give generously. We do the next Jesus-like thing over and over again. And did you notice what God is doing in the midst of all of this? Whenever I'm doing the next Jesus-like thing, the next opportunity, I'm saying yes in obedience to the next step, navigating the next difficulty. God is making me whole. God is making me whole. Just like James said in James chapter 1 from those first couple of weeks, let perseverance do its work, because he's maturing you. He's getting you to a place where you lack nothing, where you're whole and you are complete. And it happens when we connect the dots. And then all of a sudden, we start looking back. We start looking back at all of these and we think, wait a second. You mean when I was fighting the lion, God was already several steps ahead and he saw Goliath before I even heard of his name? Oh, you mean way back here when I was fighting and I was dealing with the bear, God was raising me up to deliver his people from the hand of the adversary, of the enemy? You mean way back here when I was on a hillside, God was trying to show me that he was the good shepherd? And so when I got to the valley of the shadow of death, I knew I wouldn't have to fear any evil, because my God is with me. His rod and his staff, they comfort me. See, I gotta sometimes go backwards and connect the dots to see the faithfulness of God, because when I go backwards, then I can go forwards. And I know there are times and seasons in your life where you think to yourself, but I'm at a dot though that just feels like it doesn't really fit though, or make sense. I was thinking about this when I look back at my life, and if I look back in my adult life and jobs that I've had, there's one job that makes zero sense. And it's when I was in college and I worked at a waste paper plant. And he's like, I did not see that coming. Me neither. And they dropped the recycling, the trash into the bin over and over and over again and went around in a circle. And each person had a role to be able to take certain out, clear glass or green glass or plastics or just garbage. And when you're the new young guy, the lowest on the totem pole, you take the trash out of it. Okay. You know, and I remember being there one morning, 14 degrees in the middle of winter, thinking, why did my mom get me this job? And she knew somebody. I'm like, woo, this is awesome, great connection. And I'm there, and I'm standing around this bin. And there's this middle-aged white guy who looks at me and says, hey, you look familiar to me. I'm like, oh, yeah, like I just started here. I'm new. My name's Mark. He's like, I think you preached at a church I go to. I'm like, yeah, I do that too on the weekends. You know, on the weekends. This is when all my preaching gigs were, they pay a little bit, all right? And so I'm in college and I'm working and all the things, everything in between. And I'm like, yeah, I'm preaching. And around the bin here, around this spinning wheel of trash, people started asking me about Jesus. There's a Mexican immigrant, a 45-year-old black man named Conrad. He's the only name I remember, sorry. It's been a minute, sorry. A single mom, white lady with kids, was working 2 jobs. She left there and went to Subway afterwards. And there's the other gentleman and myself. When I was preparing this message this week, I thought we all have these things or seasons where we feel like, man, that's kind of an outlier on the connect the dots. You know what I can't get out of my head? A church that is for each of those people. You know what I couldn't get out of my head when God was stirring me to do something new? That's what I couldn't get out of my head. That's what I couldn't unsee. I want that mom, just like I did when I was standing around that circle. I want for that mom to know Jesus, and I want for her to know a community of people who care about her. I want for Conrad to know that there's a place where he can come. I want for the immigrant to know there's a place where he could come. I want for all of those people to know there is a place where they could come and they could hear the good news of Jesus. Every person from every nation, tribe, and tongue, that's what I want for them to know. See, this thing sometimes in our lives that feels like the outlier, if we will look back, we'll actually see ourselves get to a place where it's full circle. Because what I saw around that circle is what I'm standing in the middle of today. Come on, somebody give him praise for that. Somebody give him praise for that. It's what we're standing in the middle of right now. It's what we're standing in the middle of right now. Because there's not anything that God can't use, that God wastes. It's full circle. Can I show you something cool, full circle here in the Bible before we leave? Let's go back to where we started, Psalm chapter 69. Several verses later, as David is still characterizing the damage, the pain that he is enduring, that he is facing, he goes back to Psalm 69. Later on in verse 21, he says, they put gall in my food. It's gross. They gave me vinegar for my thirst. This is the persecution and pain that he is facing. But there was also something else that was happening. Because if that scene sounds familiar to you, it's because you're really good at connecting the dots. Because what David experienced in Psalm 69 and was writing about was not only describing his experience, it was prophesying. It was prophesying what God was ultimately going to do through the throne of David in the lives of people, in which the Messiah, the Son of God, the King of Kings, the one who has an everlasting kingdom, he would come. And the experience that he experienced was just like what David described in Psalm 69:21. John chapter 19. Later, knowing that everything had now been finished, so that the scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, I'm thirsty. And a jar of wine vinegar was there. Just like what David described in his difficulty. So they soaked a sponge in it, put the sponge on a stalk of the hyssop plant, and lifted it to Jesus' lips. When he had received the drink, Jesus said, it is finished. With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. The damage that David was in was not only testifying that God wasn't done with him yet, it was testifying that God is far from done yet. There's not just another one on the way, there's the one on the way, Jesus. And he gave his life on the cross on our behalf so that our sins could be forgiven. In a scene in which he expressed his thirst. And what he did on the cross is the sign, the symbol, and then stated, is finished. I have done for you what you could not do for yourself. I have done for you the ultimate thing that humanity needed to be done. I have done for you. I have sacrificed myself for you. I have done that. So watch this. So you can know I'm not done with you yet. I'm not done with you yet. For every lie of the enemy in which he says you're too damaged for God to do anything with you, Jesus speaks back, I've done everything that you need. Everything that you've needed to be done, I've done it for you, so you can know God is not done with you yet. God is not done with you yet. He's only getting started. The cross was proof positive. I'm only getting started with you. With you. It's not done. Would you stand with me? Would you stand with me? I want to pray for us. He's not done. I want you to hear me right now, in this moment, in this room. He's not done. He's not done with you yet. Don't you put your head down. Don't you walk away, but you don't know what I did or what I said. I'm pretty sure it's over. Don't you walk away. Don't you walk away like that. Don't you walk away like that. He's not done. He's not done with you. He's not done with you yet. God, I declare that in this place. I thank you for that in this place. In fact, why don't we in this moment right now, let's just lean in and why don't we just sing that? Why don't we just say that together right now in this place? He's not done. He's not done with me yet. You're not done with me yet. We believe it. We believe it.